is Jessica, if you don't know me already. Me and my family left the Jehovah's Witness religion organization slash cult about 1.5 years ago. It's January 2018. My husband and my 5 kids, we all left at the same time, along with different family members and friends. I haven't done a video in a while. I've been wanting to. I don't think that I was able to for a while. I just kind of had gone through some emotional issues after realizing everything I had gone through, and kind of started to let go, and then just kind of some weird, I don't even know how to describe it to people, but I can't even describe it as a depression. I just couldn't concentrate. I couldn't multitask. I was having a difficult time cooking and cleaning and just basically functioning on a day-to-day basis. But I did some research and just kind of let myself go through it, and got a little help from some family and some friends, and seemed to help a little. So I'm getting back to my normal self, and I'm able to function better on a daily basis. But I just wanted to talk about some things and try to do some other videos like this. I want to be able to help people, but at the same time I also want to keep this as record, because I know eventually these are going to be things that I'm going to forget, and I really don't want to forget everything, to a certain extent anyway. I want to be able to put the past behind, but also use this kind of knowledge that we have of the things that we've gone through to help other people. Anyway, I can't say that I'm not bitter towards the organization and the things that have happened. I know there's a few channels I've been listening to lately that they have a more positive view of things that have happened to them, and I think that they still have family in it, and maybe they haven't been treated as badly by them. I know everybody goes through things, but I'm slightly bitter, and there's nothing wrong with that. We've all gone through some pretty terrible things because of the organization. I'm shunned by my mother. I'm shunned by my mother-in-law. She shuns our children. Shuns my husband. She even shuns her other sons, who are not disfellowshipped, but who have listened to us and are no longer part of the organization. So we've been treated pretty terrible by people, and those are some things I'd like to talk about in some other videos too. But this one in particular, the reason I wanted to do this video is because one thing that happened to me a lot growing up was my mother always ran to the elders for everything, and we were trained to let me start that again. We were trained growing up to always run to the elders for every little thing, to tell on other people, to confess our sins, to confess what's going on in your house. And it was done in such a way that the elders are the good guys, and in order to be right with Jehovah, you would need to confess your sins to the elders. So I kind of did some research on some things, which was really weird because I haven't looked in the watchtowers in a while, so it was kind of icky to say the least. So growing up, my mom, whenever I would go to her for something, not knowing that she was a complete robot and couldn't think for herself, she would always say, you know, you really should go talk to the elders about that, honey. They can help you. And I didn't like going and running to the elders. I felt like that was the last resort. So with every little thing that I ever did, any decision I ever had to make, I would look in the bound volumes or look in you know, later on when we had the computer, I would look in the CD-ROMs that we would get. But that's how I made every single decision, especially when it came to my marriage or just anything. But any marriage problems, that was my mother's reasoning, was just go to the elders, honey, and go talk to the elders and they'll help you. And it wasn't just her either. It was her best friend, any friends that I ever had. And I think a lot of the times that I would talk to people having problems, or when I was having problems, was because my mother never taught me to think for myself. And I'm not saying all Jehovah's Witnesses are like this. I know that there's plenty of Jehovah's Witnesses that can think for themselves. But for some reason, the way that I view my mother is, I think the way that the brainwashing and the indoctrination worked with her, she was never able to develop emotionally or to just develop into a mature person to be able to make decisions on her own. And the friends that she had, two of her closest friends, were very domineering. They still are very domineering, and she always would go to them and ask them, what should I do with this? What should I do with that? And she would listen to them. So it was this constant ping pong that she did with her friends and with the elders. So a lot of the decisions that I made, I did a similar thing, but with the bound volumes, and then eventually would make decisions based on what the bound volumes said. I didn't always run to the elders like they told me to, though. So, but I mean, there were some times that I did, and it was very frustrating. There was this one time, just to give you an example, I think I was about 17, and it was in that first year stage of being baptized where they say stuff's going to happen to you, you know, Satan's going to attack you somehow in that first year of your baptism. And sure enough, of course, you know, I met a worldly boy and got into some trouble and felt the need that I needed to confess to my mother. And the first thing she did, and this is in the evening, the first thing she did was she's like, I'm gonna call the elders. She gets on the phone with them and calls them, and I think they made it over to our house in about an hour. And I just remember them sitting on the couch and me sitting in a chair across the room from them, and then my mother sitting in the rocking chair. And I don't even remember what they asked me or how they asked me, but I just remember they asked me like one question, and I remember just crying and walking out of the room, and then listening while I was in the other room, listening behind the door what they were saying. And, well, we need to get a judicial committee together, and basically 17-year-old having to confess, you know, her personal life with these two grown men, which I really didn't have a father around, so that kind of made it even more uncomfortable. But I just, when you look back at the policies and how young girls like that are treated, it's a sad, scary thing to have to sit there and, you know, you just basically are losing your dignity. And it's very embarrassing and very traumatizing to a young girl of that age. But anyway, that was one of the times my mother was like, you gotta call the elders and we're gonna do this, and that was her reasoning on everything. And then another thing that she always said was, even after you go talk to the elders and nothing's fixed or nothing's changed, is just leave it in Jehovah's hands. Just leave it in Jehovah's hands. He'll take care of you. It'll all be fine. Jehovah will take care of everything. And then basically do nothing after that. That was her motto in life. And she still continues to do the same thing now. You know, nothing's different. Now when it comes to marriage, and which seem to be a lot of the problems that go on in the congregation, and not just with mine or people in the family, but I mean, there's always marital problems, and that can be another video, but it's just the way the organization is designed in, a woman being submissive and listening to the head of her household. I have a hard time even saying that. It's sad. I hate those words. But when it comes to the whole marriage thing, it's either you talk to a mature sister in the congregation when you're having problems, and I know that most witnesses out there and witnesses that have left, ex-Jehovah's Witnesses, have not had perfect marriages. I think the majority of us haven't, and it's a struggle, and it still is a struggle now because we're having to change our identities and those things that we fought with. Because I never was a good Christian wife and did everything my husband told me, and it caused problems because here he's hearing it from the society that, sisters are supposed to act a certain way towards their husband, but then the sisters here, every once in a while we heard how husbands would treat their wives. So I remember this sister in the congregation who told me, I was talking to her, kind of having some problems at the time, and she was married to somebody abusive in the past. This is an older sister, probably in her 80s, regular pioneer. She had an abusive husband, her first husband, and then her second husband was also abusive. So her advice to me was just to toughen up and, get a backbone, toughen up, because what other options do sisters in the congregation have other than to just toughen up? We could not get divorces. If you get divorced, you get disfellowshipped, and if you separate, you can't get remarried. So that was her advice to me, was just to toughen up. And maybe she didn't give me all like the mumbo jumbo of what the watchtower literature says or anything like that. I think she just had life lessons, and she knew the struggle, I guess, so to speak, and there aren't really any options for you to do other than that, just to toughen up. So there are a lot of marital problems in the congregation. I mean, that's how, when the brothers follow the policies, wives are treated a certain way. We're not, the husbands are head and the women are just supposed to be quiet and not speak in the congregation unless the brothers tell you you can. So anyway, so the point of doing this video was, how is it that as wives, and this isn't just wives going to the elders to complain about their husbands, but this has to do with many different situations that happen. How do they get people to run to the elders to confess their sins or to tattle on other people because they say if you don't let the elders know what this other person in the congregation is doing after you've gone to them to talk to them and tell them they should go to the elders. Those are for more serious matters too, but anyway, how do they get people to go to the elders? Well, it's done with the watchtowers and the twisting of scriptures and the talks that they give and the way they word things, and I did some research in some of the bound volumes, which was not that enjoyable. It's hard to look in them, but here was some of the stuff that I found. This is a Watchtower of 07, February 15th, pages 13 to 17. Says, "To this end, husbands need to deal with their wives in a loving way that Jesus deals with his figurative wife." So what really bothers me about that is they would always use the word deal when it came to husbands with their wives. And I never thought that that was loving, even when I was in it. It was like using that word deal. So we're just something that needs to be dealt with, you know? It just is really annoying. And that was one of the first things that caught my attention. Then there's the Watchtower 2012, May 15th, pages 8 through 12, paragraph 19. This is quoting somebody. I was tempted to separate because of financial non-support and spiritual endangerment. The elders were very helpful. And then paragraph 21, ... and seek the spiritual assistance of the elders. Then there's Watchtower 2010, June 15th, pages 29 through 32. A marriage mate need not feel guilty for reporting such unchristian conduct to the elders. Indeed, Jehovah has compassion for the victims of such mistreatment. Ridiculous. A mate need not feel guilty for reporting on their spouse. That right there is just unbelievable. Ridiculous. And I think these are things that we read through that we don't really, I think subconsciously we're hearing them, but we don't really think about it because we're so busy, you know, we just read over this information and we take it to be true, you know, when we're in it. We don't, but subconsciously we're hearing these things. I don't even remember, a lot of things that I see in some of the XJW videos, where they're talking about apostasy, but I don't even remember hearing that when I was in the congregation. And even sometimes I'll look back on some of my old notes from assemblies and conventions or public talks, and I'll read things in there about apostasy, and I'm like, I don't even remember writing that or even thinking anything serious about it. But it's really in there all the time. So here's another good one. This one is the Watchtower 2016, August, pages 9 through 14. Willful non-support, severe physical abuse, which, severe, like, why can't you separate from your spouse for any abuse, whether it's emotional or any physical abuse? This says severe physical abuse. And, of course, absolute endangerment of a Christian spiritual life. They love that one. Which I didn't even know I didn't even know until after we left the organization that you could divorce your spouse if they became an apostate. I had no idea that was something that happened. So, the same article, when there are serious problems, marriage mates should ask the elders for help. These men have a lot of experience. So, speaking of experience, one thing that always got me was there was these two brothers, and this was back in 2008 because I was pregnant with my last child, and these two brothers, fresh out of MTS school, moved into our congregation, and they became elders right away. And they were not married. They had no experience in marriage whatsoever. And I think they eventually got married, but I think the rule for the MTS brothers was that you were supposed to wait like 2 or 3 years before you get involved with somebody. But anyway, experienced brothers or experienced elders, you're supposed to go to them for marital advice, because they're experienced and they're helpful. So, another experience I had with one of these brothers from MTS, who, this is not like too long before we woke up. I'm saying probably about a year before all this happened. It was the last time I ever took my mother's advice, and I think I was just super frustrated at the time, and she's like, you know, you really need to go talk to the brothers. And I went and spoke to the brothers, and they gave me no advice whatsoever. It was like, I went in there, it was extremely awkward. I didn't want to go in there, but I felt like it was my last resort at the time. And I left there feeling worse than I did before, because I felt like that was letting people into my business, and I think it just kind of hit me because it had been so long since I had spoke to them before about anything personal, not these particular brothers, but in other congregation. But I just left there feeling worse than before, and felt worse about the fact that I had gone and talked to them about my husband behind his back. This is the kind of things they do to you, though. They separate families and they turn you against each other instead of like actually trying to work them out. You know, not that I'm in control of anybody else's actions, but at least I could have done something different now that I look back on it than going and talking to the elders, because it did no good at all. Nothing ever became of it. They never spoke to him. The only thing that they said was, maybe you can talk to your husband and see if he'll come and talk to us, and that was it. But at the time, too, he was also a ministerial servant, so it was like, and our congregation was very limited as far as having help in the congregation, and I think that's also another issue with, it's like, brothers can do whatever they want and anything slides, you know, it doesn't matter. So, anyway, that's just a little experience that I had with them. It was not pleasant, and they had no experience whatsoever to be giving advice. And it happens a lot in other congregations too. I mean, these brothers are taken right out of MTS. They're not married. You can't even go to the MTS school if you're married. Well, back then. Now they have, what is it, the school for couples? And then they have school for single sisters. I don't know. It's like all different now. Anyway, so here's another one. If you are troubled over serious sins and have sought help from the elders, rather than hide your sins, talk to the congregation elders. Isaiah 1:18, set matters straight with Jehovah. So, in order to set matters straight with Jehovah, you have to confess to the elders. So, in reality, the elders equal Jehovah. Right? And then it says, it is vital that those who commit such sins seek help from the Christian elders. And then this one, like, I'm just kind of like, what? It says, godly jealousy moves us to support the decisions of the elders. Godly jealousy. Okay. I can't say that there's not good elders in the congregation either, because there are, and you know, I was helped in the past by one in particular that I remember. His name was Brother Hernandez. Very, very nice brother. The man that I married when I was 17, the one that I got involved with, the worldly guy, I was going through some things with him, and which is what led up to the divorce a few years later. And I remember my mother and her friend, you know, telling me that I should go to meeting that night. I had just found out what had happened, and then they still talked me into going to the meeting, and I was gonna feel Jehovah's presence, and that's where I needed to be, you know. Instead of at home with a box of tissue, you know, I needed to be at meeting, being indoctrinated so that I could feel better. So anyway, I go, and I couldn't drag myself out of the car, and this Brother Hernandez, came out to the car with this big old wad of tissue in his hand. It was so sweet, and I really hope he wakes up or is out already. But very, very nice brother. So there are genuine elders in there, but the majority of them are just there to follow policy. And this is what happens when you run to the elders. The majority of what they're there for, and we've seen it in so many of the XJW videos, is that they are just there to push policy. And if you're not doing what you're supposed to be doing, you know, get booted out or reproved or whatever. You know, you cannot ask them, you cannot be a genuine person, you cannot be your genuine self. If you are not a robot, they will know it, and their pincers will go up, and you're in trouble. So you cannot say anything to them. So this is just, you know, a little, just wanted to kind of bring out those things as to why, you know, women in the congregation have the tendency to go talk to the elders about things, at least in my experience with my mother, and I know with several other sisters in the congregation that I've seen it happen many times. You know, they make you feel like you cannot have a clean conscience until you go and confess your sins to the elders or go and talk to them. You know, it's not, you cannot have a clean conscience. It's ridiculous. The second that I found out that the organization was a sham was the first second of my life that I did not live with any guilt anymore. And that was so refreshing. That was the most refreshment I've ever gotten. I never received refreshment like that in the congregation, but to live a guilt-free life knowing that there's nothing that we can do to earn salvation, or however you want to look at it. There's we never even knew the word grace until we left the organization, and I think that was one of the biggest things for me, was that there's nothing that we can do. You know, we cannot, doesn't matter how many hours we put in field service, how many people we talk to informally, there's absolutely nothing that we can do to earn it. And they made you feel like you had to speak to the elders and be good in the congregation and do everything right in order to earn it. So that was, for me, that was such a huge relief, and to not live with the guilt from past wrongs. And we get to just, you know, be us now. And I hope you like this video and have a great evening. The light kind of changed out here because I messed up on the video when I was recording. The battery died at about 3 minutes in to 20-minute video, and so I had done that earlier before I picked up the kids from school, and so now it's a little darker out. The lighting's probably better now anyway, but anyway, have a good night. Take care. Bye.
You've been trying to put me in a box, saying this is it, you'll never be enough. Take those dreams and put them on a shelf. And for many years I was holding back, thinking I should be more like this and that. But then I saw the real truth of it all. No, I am not who you think I am. I am so much more. I am one with source. I am limitless, infinite, powerful, abundant, complete from the start. Creator of all, I am that I am. Oh yes, I am that I am. And I've been stuck in thoughts, doing it their way. Didn't listen to the things my heart would say, letting fear take over and decide. But when I realized that the choice was